Hi friends, let's discuss CAT 2023 slot 1 set 2. The schematic diagram. So there's a diagram that has been shown to us. It shows 12 rectangular houses in a housing complex. House numbers are mentioned in the rectangle representing the houses. So I think these are A1, B1, C1 are the house numbers. The houses are located in 6 columns. That is, we can see column A, column B, column C, and similarly column D, column E, column. Perfectly alright. And there are 2 rows. One is R1, row 1, row 2. The houses are divided into 2 blocks. One is block XX and block YY. So I think this diagram is pretty self-explanatory. We can see 2 blocks, we can see 6 columns, we can see 2 rows. And again, the houses are numbered. Now, the diagram also shows 2 roads, one passing in front of the houses, this road, and one is in the middle of the block. So these are 2 roads. Now some of the houses are occupied. Some of the houses. It means all of the houses are not occupied. Some of them are occupied, some of them are vacant. And the remaining ones are vacant and are the only ones available for sale. It means occupied houses are not available for sale. Empty houses are available for sale. And there is the road adjacency value of a house is the number of its sides adjacent to the road. So there is a parameter that talks about road adjacent value, which is how many roads are connected or adjacent to your house. Like it gives an example also, like the road adjacency value of C2 is 2. C2 is here. One road is this, one road is this. So in this way, I can actually calculate a road adjacency. Like A1 road adjacency value has to be 0 because no road is connected. B1 is again 0. C1 is 1. A2 is 1. B2 is 1. C2 is 2 because both the roads are connected with C2. So this is how you can look at the road adjacency value. For D1 again 1, D2 is 1, E1 is 0, E2 is 1, F1 is 0 and F2 is, so for D2 it is 2 not 1. I'm so sorry. So that is how road adjacency value I have written. And there is something called as neighbor count, that is NC. Neighbor count is the of a house's number of side of that house adjacent to occupied houses in the same block. It means neighbor count means adjacent houses that are occupied. So we'll not count the empty houses. Now A1 can have maximum 2 neighbors because if B1 and A2 both are occupied, in that case A1 could have maximum 2 neighbors. It might have 0 neighbors as well because I do not know which houses are empty and which houses are occupied. But definitely the potentially, so I'll write the figure. What is the maximum number of neighbors one can have? So A1 could have maximum 2 neighbors. B can have 3, B1 can have 3 neighbors. C1 can have 2 neighbors. A2 could have 2 neighbors. B2 could have 3 neighbors. C2 could have 2 neighbors. That's maximum. Actual, how many will be there? That will come to know. In case with D1, you got 2 neighbors. E1 got 3. F1 got 2 neighbors. 2 neighbors, 3 neighbors and 2 neighbors. So this is how you can have maximum number of neighbors that one can have. Now, the base price of a vacant house. Now, for example, even C1 can have, so maximum possible neighbor count has been given. The base price of house is rupees 10 lakh. If the house does not have a parking space and if there is a parking space, then it's 12 lakh. So this base price is 10 without parking, 12 is with parking. Great. And now the quoted price of a vacant house is calculated as, so now quoted price is base price plus 5 times road adjacent value plus 3 times neighbor count. So this is how you can calculate a quoted price of vacant or empty house. You don't want to calculate the prices for a occupied house since they're not for sale. So now then this way, so this value could be 10 or 12. This value could be a multiple of 5. Now road adjacency value, either it is going to be 0 or it is going to be 1 or it is going to 2. In terms of neighbor count, it could be 0, it could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3. These are the possibilities. And based on the question, we will consider those possibilities. Now let's read the further information. The maximum quoted price of a house in block XX is rupees 24 lakhs. Interesting. A1, B1, I'll write a little lower. A1, B1 and C1. A2, B2 and C2. Now, let me calculate what could be the maximum possible price for A1. So, A1 has 10 or 12 plus its road adjacency value is 0 and its maximum neighbor point could be 2. So, its maximum possible value could be 18. So, this house does not have a value of 24 lakhs. What about A2? Same, 10 by 12 plus road adjacency is 1, so 5 plus maximum 6. So maximum value could go to 12 plus 5, 17 plus 6, 23. Again, we have to figure out which house has 24 lakhs. What about B1? B1 again can have maximum 21 because 10 or 12 plus road adjacency is 0. Maximum neighbor count would be 3, in that case 9. So this again does not reach us to 24. Let's talk about B2. 10 by 12. Road adjacency value is 1. That is 5 lakh. Plus neighbor could reach to 9. Now here we can figure out a combination of 10 plus 5 plus 9. So I would say B2 has a potential of 24 lakhs. What about C1, C2? C1, 10 or 12 plus road adjacency is 1. So 5 plus 6. So it can maximum reach to 23. What about C2? 10 by 12 plus 10. Since road adjacency is 2, so you have 10 lakh plus it can have 6 or 3 or 0. In any case, this value is not reaching to, it can go up to more than 24, but 24 not getting. So I think that house has to be B2. Now imagine if B2 has got a price of 24 lakh. In that case, it has all the 3 adjacent houses occupied. So I'm just putting a tick, tick and tick. And B1 itself will be vacant house. So now in block XX we know A2, C2 and B1 are occupied. B2 is empty. It has got a 24 lakh value. And then it further says the minimum quoted price of a house in block Y. Now similarly we have to do it for block YY, that minimum quoted price 15 lakh. We'll try to do it. And it says row 1 has 2 occupied house, 1 in each block. Now that's an interesting point. Row 1 has 1 occupied house, 1 in each block. So in XX block we have 1 occupied house in row 1. And that is already we know B1 is occupied. So in that case these 2 houses will be vacant. So I think for block XX we are very much sorted. A1 is empty, B1 is occupied, C1 is empty, A2 is occupied, B2 is empty and C2 is occupied. So I think for block XX we are very much clear. Now in the similar way let us try to do calculation for block YY, wherein you are saying the minimum quoted price is how much? 15 lakh. It means no other house should have less than 15 lakh of quoted price. Now that is what we have to. And in the same way, what we did for house block XX, we will do it for block YY. Yeah. Okay. Let's go further. Just give me 1 minute, guys. I have to figure out the markers. Yeah. Now let's talk about D1, E1 and F1, D2, E2 and F2. Now it also talks about some more information, like both houses in column E are vacant. So these 2 houses are vacant. And column D and column has at least 1 occupied house. So you might have at least 1 occupied. Maybe out of D1, D2, either 1 is occupied or both of them are occupied. F1, F2. Now we know that in this particular row only 1 house will be occupied. So there are 2 possibilities. Either D1 is occupied. So in one case I'll take D1 to occupied and D1 F1 is occupied. And in the second case I will try to see that occupied, unoccupied. Now it says जो 15 lakh house है, one such house in column E. column E का एक house 15 lakh का. So let us try to see in this scenario what could be the potential price of E2. And it also says that there is only one house with parkings in block Y. So only 112 value we can take. So let me just try to talk about E1, E2. E2 could have 10 by 12, right? And it has only how many occupied house? 1. That's it. So, and road agency value is 0. So we can take 15 lakh. Possible is if we take this combination 12 plus 3. So maybe E2 can have a price of 12 plus 3 in this scenario, 15. What about, sorry, E1, this is E1. What about E2? What could be the price of E2? 10 or 12 plus, since road agency value 5, plus you might have 0, 3 or 6. We can also reach to this value 15 by taking 10 plus 5. It means all the houses next to it are vacant. Now, will that be possible? That's not possible. Why? Because if you take these two houses to be vacant, in that case, D1, F1 both has to be occupied, because column D and column F have at least one occupied house. So if we assume that E2 has a house value of 10 plus 5, in that case, we have to take D2 and F2 both to be empty house. In that case, D1 and F1 both has to be occupied, and this will violate your condition. So obviously this case is not going to be helpful. So in that case, we have to take E1 to be the house that has a value of 15. But in that case, we have to analyze both the scenario. Now suppose if E1 has a house price of quoted price of 15 lakh, what is the price of F1 if it is vacant? If F1 is vacant, its price could be 10, because now you can't take parking because you have already consumed parking over here. 10 plus road adjacency value is 5, right? And neighbor count will be, so I think this will have fair enough, not a problem, because you should not have price less than 50. What about this case? If you take D1 to be empty, what is going to be its price? Oh, I'm sorry. F1 does not have a road agency value of 0. We have to take F1 has road adjacency value to be 0. Now, this house is vacant. If I take this house to be, definitely if I'm taking this to be empty, this has to be occupied. In that case, this value will become 13. Now, 13 cannot be the quoted price. So, this case is not satisfying our case. Now you understand what we have done, because it says in block YY the minimum quoted price has to be 15. So if I take E1 to be having a quoted price 15 lakh and I take D1 occupied, F1 empty, in that case F1's price will become less than 15. That is not possible. So for this question we have to take this scenario, like D1 is unoccupied, F1 is occupied. And if D1 is unoccupied, in that case D2 has to be occupied. Now in F2, I can take it to vacant or occupied. Let's calculate if it is vacant, what will be its price? 10 plus, again you can say 5. So this price is going to be more than 15. So no problem. So I think there are two possibilities. F2 could be vacant or it could be. So now I know in block XX, A2, C2 and B1 are occupied, rest are vacant. In block YY, D1 is vacant, E1 is vacant, F1 is occupied, D2 is occupied, E2 is vacant, and F2 could be both. And based on that, we have to answer our question. So hopefully, I think we will be able to answer our question. Let's go one by one. What are the questions? So pretty interesting question where you analyze multiple cases. And let's look at first question. How many houses vacant in block XX? So you know that in block XX, A1 is vacant, A2, B1 and C2 are occupied and rest 3 houses are vacant. So the answer for this question is going to be 3. Which of the following houses definitely occupied? So D2 is definitely occupied, F2 can't say, B1 is also definitely occupied, A1 is not. So I think this question was cancelled by CAT because There were two options that are correct, like D2 is also definitely occupied, as well as B1 is also occupied. So because of that, this question was cancelled, or maybe you can modify the option and we can take the answer to be D2 and B1. Which of the following option best describe the number of vacant houses in row number 2? Now in row number 2, B2 is definitely vacant, right? E2 is definitely vacant. Now F2 may or may not be. So in that case, there are two options. Either vacant houses could be 2 or it could be 3. So I think option 2 is the correct answer for this one. What is the maximum possible quoted price for a vacant house in column E? So in column E, the maximum quoted prices. So obviously E2 might have a maximum quoted prices. So let's calculate for E2. I will take 10 lakh as a base price because 12 lakh, because there could be one parking, and when we are making the question here, we had take the option was 12 plus 3. So already parking is occupied for E1. So I think E2 we have to take base price as 10. A road efficiency value has to be 5 because one road is there, 5 plus. Now I wanted to maximize the neighbor count. So I think I will assume that D1, D2 as well as F2 both of them are occupied, and then E1 is unoccupied. So you have 6. So maximum quoted price will be 21 lakh for this one. So the answer is 21 lakh. Which of the house in block YY has parking space? So we've already done that. E1 has a parking space. So option 1 is the correct answer for this question. That's it.